Well, welcome everybody. I want to thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Stephen Pinecker with Mormon Book Reviews, and this is my delightful frequent co-host, Rebecca Biblioteca.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
So we're going to get started here in a few minutes, but what we wanted to do was, well, first of all, for those of you who are not subscribed to Mormon Book Reviews, go on your phone right now and do it. And more importantly, Rebecca has the podcast Mormonish. Make sure you get subscribed to that channel as well.
Shameless self-promotion.
Absolutely. I'm an evangelical Christian. That's what we do. So basically, we just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We got a pretty full house. There's still people trickling in. This is really a cool event. It's already, in one sense, a great success. And part of the reason that this has become such a great success is because many of the people who have partnered up with us. Rebecca's going to tell us a little bit about the people who have partnered with us.
Absolutely. We have some wonderful sponsors, and we want to have them just take a very brief minute, because we're trying to start this right at 7, and tell us a little bit about their organizations. So let's start with Thrive, which is absolutely wonderful. We have Nan and Rod Osborne in the house who are going to talk to us a little more about Thrive. Big hand for Nan and Rod. You probably recognize them from Mormon No More and all their work they do with Thrive. Heard you guys want to Good job.
Hey, is this on? Yep. We are glad to be here, and Thrive is really happy to help sponsor this event. I hope most of you already know what Thrive is. If you don't, it's a kind of a support group. The full name is Thrive Beyond Religion. So it was set up as a support group and a way to find like-minded people, find new community once you've left Mormonism. There are local groups who meet up and down the Wasatch Front. You can get on the website, thrivebeyondreligion.com, or you can come find Rod or me after this is over, and we'll tell you about it. There's going to be an event on March 18th at Thanksgiving Point. John DeLynn and Stephen Hassin, you guys know who that is, America's cult expert, are going to be there speaking. It's going to be a worldwide Thrive event, so it's going to be super fun. Anyway, we're glad we support this movie, and we're happy to be sponsors.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, one of our other wonderful sponsors is, if you've been watching the promo, Mormon Stories. John says hello to everybody. He's, I think, on a cruise, a vacation.
Much-needed vacation.
Yes, a much-needed vacation, but he has sent the lovely Maven in his stead to just say a few words about Mormon Stories. The lovely Maven, who looks incredible tonight. That's right.
I'm so scared that I'm going to have like a timber moment. Because I have had them, and so like once you start, there's no stopping it. Anyway, yes, I didn't tell John that I was going to be coming dressed as a Victorian hooker, but I just decided to have fun with it. Thank you. I'm having a good time. I've been at home a lot, and so I'm just happy to get out of the house. But anyway, yes, John sends his love and support, as well as the OSF board and Mormon Stories staff, and we're excited and glad to have been a part of this. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Maven.
Thank you, Maven.
Stand over more. Okay, another one of our sponsors that you probably saw on the slideshow was not able to be here tonight. His name is Bill Knowlton, and he is the founder of a clothing line called Ally Parent Apparel. And you can probably guess from the name what the mission of this clothing line is. He's a member of the community, he's a parent, and he's an ally. And he wanted to find a way that all of us could wear a hat, put on a sweatshirt or something to show our support, even to a random stranger who may just happen to see you and need to see that support that day. So he's done a lot to support this project. And in fact, if everybody wants to reach in front of the table in front of you, there are 3 little slips of paper where you have won some Ally Parent gear. So the table in front of you, reach under it, pull it out. It's taped there. There should be 3. He's giving a hat, a hoodie, and a T-shirt. There are instructions. Oh, if you sat on the front row, I'm so sorry.
The backyard professor is not going to win anything.
I am really sorry. Raise your hand if you find it. If it's not right in front of you, knock your neighbor out of the way. Maybe they can't find it. They're taped under the tray right in front of you. It's a big piece of paper, and it says, congratulations, you have won either a hat or a T-shirt or a hoodie from Ally Parent. So is anybody finding them? I taped them there. Oh, there we've got one. Okay. Anybody else? Hold it up so everyone can see what it looks like. Can you hold it up so they can see what they're looking for? It's a long piece of paper. That's right. Okay. So feel your way along. There's 3 out there, and you can go to the website and choose one. So anyway, Ally Parent Apparel, please check that out with the wonderful Bill Knowlton.
Okay, so before we get started, first of all, we want to thank Jeff Pingree for coming. And we're going to... And we're going to do a Q&A as soon as the movie's over. But I wanted to... There's one person here that I wanted us to acknowledge, because very shortly, an institution here in Salt Lake City will be shutting its doors. And that is Utah Lighthouse Ministries, founded by Gerald and Sandra Tanner. And Sandra Tanner is in the house. And I want to thank her so much. Please acknowledge her.
There she is, Sandra.
We love you.
We love you, Sandra. We love you.
So thank you, Sandra. You've been a real inspiration to me. And again, folks, this movie is a beautiful movie because it's a movie about a person's journey of faith. And Jeff and I have had conversations about that. But also, it's in many ways could be a faith-promoting film too. And that's what I think is it's a beautiful intersection of what we're doing with Mormon book reviews, where all the voices of the restoration are heard. And that's what's so important. So this room is full of TBMs, post-Mormons, LGBTQ people, and evangelicals. We're all under the same roof. That's a miracle. And I want to thank you so much for making it happen. So let's get the show on the road.
Let's do it.
All right, everybody. What do you all think of the film?
So good. So good.
So, Elder Pingree, why don't you come on down and let's thank Elder Jeff Pingree so much for the beautiful work you did. Let's give him a standing ovation, folks.
Richard. Oh, sorry. It wasn't me.
Thank you so much.
So good.
All right. So, Jeff, what was it like? What was it like? We're going to pass the microphone around in a couple of minutes. So for those of you who have some questions, what was it like watching this movie tonight in this theater?
Not as bad as I imagined. I've told him before that I almost never sit through this movie, so it's just hard to watch. Too much of me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really powerful film. Like you said, if he had made it 5 years later or sooner, it'd be a different film, because this really is about his journey. But wasn't it just beautiful? Like, you know, when I watched this, and we interviewed Jeff twice in our program, one of the things I said, I'm watching this film, like, no, Jeff, don't tell him he left. Because you could tell their faith was so important to them, you know, and that's what makes it so complicated, you know, for you, because you have to talk to these people, and you're in that room, and this isn't a movie, this is real, man. What was it like having those kind of engagements?
Well, I want to answer that by kind of going to a point that gets to it, which is, I think the place where I've received the most active resistance and engagement on the film that has been difficult for me is people saying, "Why did you do this to those people?" You know, this was a pretty selfish act, really, because it's about you, but what about them? And I see that point. Obviously, the fact that it makes me uncomfortable means I see that point. But I also kind of had to make a choice, and I guess in the end I thought, I have to take them seriously. I have to believe that they're going to make their own path. And so really the best form of respect would be to talk to them directly and say, this is who I am, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, I'm just telling you who I am, and, you know, where are you? Things felt very... Well, you could see it in the film. Things felt very kind of two sides, binary, when I was there, and it was very hard for them to kind of, you know... And I later thought, wow, we didn't connect at all, and, you know, we weren't speaking the same language theologically at all. But there was something about just sharing, you know, the time and talking about not believing the same thing anymore. which is something. I mean, I've been thinking about this idea that doing kind things for people is actually becomes a form of understanding. And so I think that there was something subtle that I realized was in my relationship with these people. It would be kind of inaccurate to say, oh, they're great friends and nothing's changed. That's not true. But I think that there's still a respect, or maybe a kind of a reverence for just them as people, me as a person, that we had important experiences together. And the next step doesn't need to be kind of destruction by virtue of difference, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things that troubles me the most, is just why, if someone says, now I believe something different than you, people have to start breaking family relationships. That's really sad.
Yeah, it is. And, one of the reasons why we're here tonight is a couple of months ago, my co-host, Rebecca, Biblioteca, when we do our Mormon Media Review segments, brought this movie to my attention and said we need to give this movie a platform. And so we had Jeff on and we gave it a platform, and now we have a packed theater sharing this beautiful story that's kind of slipped under the cracks. So Rebecca, I just want to thank everybody. Let's thank Rebecca for the great job she's done. And so, Rebecca, was there anything you wanted to ask Jeff before we started passing around the microphone, or any comments you want to make?
No, I think I'd love to give our audience a chance to ask some questions. So I think if anybody wants to raise their hand, I think my oldest child is going to be passing the mic around to everybody. So thank you, Trevor, for volunteering. There you go. If anybody has a question, there you go. Perfect.
I don't really have a question, Brother Jeff. I just wanted to thank you for that. I think a lot of us went on missions, with that love and belief. And I've been back to France several times still as a Mormon and as a non-Mormon. And I've been so confronted with the relationships that I've kept, for 30 years. And that really showed your authenticity in that, really showed that there's a connection, an authentic connection beyond the dogma and traditions and ordinances and all these things that just kind of kept us busy. It never really gave us an opportunity to develop a relationship beyond Mormonism. And I really felt that those people loved who you were in the end. So I just thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot to say about that, but thank you. I really appreciate it.
Can you talk a little bit about the timeline? I believe many times in the movie you had mentioned 25 years, so clearly there's been some time. Can you just talk a little bit to that?
Have you read that director's statement that's sitting out there?
Yeah, I missed that. Sorry.
This thing took me 13 years after I started, right? I shot this in 2006 and 2007, thinking I was then soon going to edit it and release it. And I, went through 8 different cuts and years of, basically depression about the film. I came to believe I would not finish this thing. And I think it's just because, and I've said this to various people, I think it's because it came to represent my kind of statement on the world, my life. And how can you do that? Who does that? I mean, what's yours, right? I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't finish it. I didn't know how to finish it. And I mean, you see where I landed. I was just absolutely ecstatic to find a way out. So the timeline is, I guess, now 15 years later, still, that's pretty amazing. Kind of hard for me to believe. But yeah, I mean, there was a long time where I thought, that's me in the film now, but it's not me in the film now. It's clearly looking much better.
See, and that's something about it that I really appreciated. I felt like we got to meet young Elder Pingree through his journals and his pictures and his cassette tapes to his brother. And then we met Elder Pingree as he's revisiting Guatemala and interaction with the people. And then we meet the voiceovers and Elder Pingree more current. So 3 versions of a wonderful person. I thought that was a really important part of the film. So.
Well, it was for me structurally because it took me a long time to get to it, and it gave me a way to use the stuff that I had. I had all these slides and journals and letters. But to create a structure where you believe that person is me, and it's also impossible for me to believe that person is me. Both feel very true to me. I can see exactly where I came from and who that is, and that's the same person. But then I also think, wow, you just were so far away from where you are now. You're a different world, a different life. And I guess I wanted those things to be in play. I wanted there to be a real sense of, is this multiple persons? Is it the same person? What's been happening? Sorry.
Yeah, me? Am I speaking? I guess I am.
If you have the mic, you're speaking.
Okay. Yeah, man. That was such a trip. Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm glad I saw it. No, I am. I mean, some of my most important artistic experiences have been things that I wondered if I'm glad I saw. So, thank you for making it. It certainly, is not a feel-good film, in my estimation. It isn't for me, but you put, in images and words something that I have felt for 40 years since I've been back from my mission, and that whole idea is, do you go back? I mean, not physically necessarily, but do you try to how do you make peace with that? And I love hearing you talk so honestly about it that you really maybe don't. And that's the truth. And that's really hard to hear, but I think really necessary. So anyway, thank you for making this film.
Thank you. Can I just say something to that? The title, which at first kind of sounds a little bit, I don't know, playful or tricky or gizmo, right? The Return of Elder Pingree. But the title stayed from the very beginning, and the more time that passed, the more I liked it because it has so many layers of meaning. What does that return? Is it return to the church? Is it return to Guatemala? Is it return to yourself? I'd like to think that even though this was kind of a story plot-wise about someone leaving with the Mormon church, it's actually, as a kind of spiritual journey, a move forward. And so in that sense, I think the return is, the kind of endless return of our lives, which is we always kind of like question ourselves, but it has to somehow add up to some kind of a movement forward, hopefully. So, yeah.
I think we also had a comment over here, Trevor, so maybe after that. Yeah, it's dark. It's hard to see. Raise them high.
In your research and stuff, did you contact any of your American companions as well and connect with where they are in their faith journey?
I did. And there was a time when there's a lot to this film that is not in the film. There was a time when I thought that they would be in the film, but there was something really different about my interviews with them. They were harsher in their judgments, which is okay. They were... I guess I feel like the thing that emerged in the film that was really important to me about my relationships with the people in Guatemala wasn't happening when I was talking to my American companions. Not that I didn't have love or connection to them, but whatever was happening in Guatemala was something different. When I said the church felt different here. I didn't, and I don't feel like in the U.S. I have a place in the church. I did kind of feel like I had a place in the church there because it was so strange to me, and I just felt like kind of wherever I was okay, and so the interviews with my North American companions were really, really different. And at a certain point, I just kind of thought about it and looked at what was here, and I thought, no, this film should be just a film in Guatemala. It goes back to Utah for Carlos Amalo, but really it's about being in Guatemala with the people in Guatemala. You notice that I had a lot of footage of people in just transit on buses moving around. I really wanted to have the people, kind of an anonymous sense, be a presence in the film. And so, yeah, that might...
I served in southern Mexico, just north of where you were, about a year and a half before. I found it to be very cathartic, very much my same experience, building some deep relationships with people that to this day I have a love for, and being ripped from them when you get a call in the morning and you're told to be on the bus that night or the following morning. And it really resonated with me. I loved I appreciated your journaling. Somebody had a great idea that told my mother before I went on my mission, and they said, "Oh, you need to have Kent take a journal that has pages that can be taken out, and he can write on his journal and send the pages home so we get to know what's going on." So I foolishly did that. The problem is trying to be honest with yourself and writing things when you knew you needed to show that you were a believer. And I have a few pages that I wrote and I kept. I've never read my journal to this day. It's been 43 years. When did you read your journal when you got home from your mission?
It took me a long time, and since I'm being honest, when I knew I had to read my journals, I had 4 volumes, and I knew I needed to read them in order to go back, but I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I paid my producer to read them and bring excerpts to me. And we talked about it, and I kind of remember what was in there, so it was hard. I mean, that was one of the reasons that I was kind of drawn in a perverse way towards this project, is why I was so resistant to looking at that archival material I had compiled while I was there, of pictures and journals and letters and tapes. It's just like, well, I was documenting my life.
Well, I know that several people have been inspired by this to go and dig out their missionary journals. My co-host on Mormonish, I think he's in the booth, he dug out his journal and contacted people from his mission and made some new connections. So the film is inspiring people to do things they never would have done, ever. So it's hard to read those. So, yeah. Who do we have next? Let's see. Oh, there you go.
God, you've been telling me what to do for 27 years. We met in the MTC before we went to Guatemala in '96. So this has been a pretty crazy experience for John and I to sit here and watch your pictures and your video. Nothing changed from the years that you were there to '96 and '98, by the way, in terms of the roads. I wanted to congratulate you and just for those that maybe haven't been to Guatemala, share a little bit about the authenticity of the people that came through in your filmmaking. A week ago tonight, I sat in my older brother's house and looked at him with him and his wife on the couch and my wife on the couch, and I said, "Well, you've been saying it to everybody else. I need you to say what you've been saying to me, to my face." So I didn't have my experience within 3 to 5 years. I waited about 25 years. And he still denied having said all kinds of horrible things about me leaving and trying to get my wife out. And that really juxtaposes against your experience with the Guatemalans, the love. They have a capacity for authentic love that we can't even imagine. And it came through. So while there may be some judgment, I did not see or feel the judgment in the sister that you spoke to, that you felt that you had a mother-son relationship with, that I am still dealing with my family. So I just wanted to say congratulations, beautiful film, and a really bad idea to come watch it because it stirred a lot of emotions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I hope that that's good in the big picture. But when I was just mentioning the difficulty in wanting to include the interviews with my North American companions, I think it's partly because I realized that in talking about our differences, the relationship was in question. And with the Guatemalans, my relationship never felt like it was in question. We had questions, but I didn't feel like the relationship was in question. I mean, and you see it when she's got my arm there and she's saying, I'd rather that you kill me, but I don't leave. Please come back. I didn't really feel any farther away from them. I just felt like things were, there was a different conversation. So, thanks.
Hi. Can you tell us what your feelings are on the church now, if you're comfortable?
Well, I mean, it's been 30 years since I've gone to church. My parents are both active in the church. My dad died 2 years ago and was active, and we were very close. He supported this film very strongly. So I have had a connection to my family. There are 6 kids in our family, and by my account at this point, only one of the children is really devoted to the church. But we're still a pretty close family. I'd like to think that, and I'm answering your question this way because I'm trying to kind of think about what connects me to the church, and it's that. There are things, beliefs that if I agree, I agree, and they're mostly having to do with what I talked about. I go straight to kind of like New Testament stuff, Christian principles. That works. That makes sense to me. But institutionally, organizationally, no, I don't. I have huge issues and problems, and I mean, this is a very gentle, mild version of me right now. I can get pretty pissed off about. So, if I have a testimony, I guess that is what you heard. I don't think that's changed much. I believe in love. That's what I believe in. I see that. I see what happens. I see people connecting with each other. I believe in kind of a good connection with other people. That's what I move towards. That's what I wanted to push this film towards. That's what I'm trying to move towards. And it hasn't crossed with the church at all, really, for a while. So... But I also am not, I never felt the desire to attack or destroy the church. I just, need to be respected to do what I do. And, the church is obviously changing so much. Obviously it's a separate conversation. But having been away for so long, I was having dinner with these guys the other night, and we were just talking, and I realized that Rebecca left much more recently, and so she's familiar with the whole history of what's been going on in the church that I'm just not. I'm far away from.
Lucky you. No, I have to say that part where you bear your testimony, the people that I've talked to about this, that is the moment. They love it. I know, clap for that. It's pivotal, and it's beautiful, and it's so well stated, and you just, I think, say what a lot of us feel right there. So it was a beautiful moment. I love that part. So who's next? Cheryl, there's a couple people in the back, if we turn around and maybe send it. Oh.
She's going to, and then we're going to get it in the back. We'll get it in the back.
Okay.
Okay. So I noticed that you intentionally left in the Concepcion where things are way harder in that area. And you didn't expand as much on why you believe, but I think that why you believe that much of them were no longer practicing. But my question is, do you think that it has to do with the cultural disparity, where in the areas where it wasn't so war-torn, where it wasn't so awful, the church provided more of a community and a friendship and more of a day-to-day joy for people, where in a merit-based religion, in places where you're seeing people shot to death in the streets every day, I would think that the belief in God would be harder. Or was that way out in the weeds? Sorry.
No, that's really interesting because I kind of see it both ways. I see it on the one hand that there are probably people for whom that's true. I also think for some people it absolutely solidifies this life connection that they have. This is what I have to hold on to, given that everything else is falling apart. And really, when I step back and think about it honestly, I don't see any compelling patterns. I think that it happens in a lot of different ways. there's no question in my mind that the more desperate you are in life, the more vulnerable you are to a lot of persuasion. And some persuasion's good. It should happen. But, you want something that explains why your life is so shitty, really, right? And who doesn't want to understand that? And so I do think that your circumstances make you much more sensitive to or susceptible to different kinds of narratives. So, I don't know. Thanks. And you're talking about the last town, right? Where I went and... Right. And I think that just specifically about that town, it's because it became literally the center. Like we had to be out because basically the police said they wake up at 1 o'clock, and after 1 o'clock you don't want to be here. And the whole film, you saw it partly, but I didn't go anywhere in that whole month in Guatemala without a huge police escort behind me. It was required by law. We couldn't not have them. And so everywhere I went in these small towns, here's me, very tall camera guy with a big camera, sound, boom, people walking here, and then the police behind them. So it was kind of intrusive, right? Even though remarkably the people didn't seem to respond that way. But that town to me was just, I think some bad stuff happened there. So
we only have about 13 minutes left to use the theater here. So I want everybody who has a question to raise your hand real tall so Trevor can see. Okay. And just try to keep the questions brief so that we can get all these questions in before we have to leave at 9 o'clock. And then, of course, we will be socializing in the bar area, so we could also talk to Jeff there, too.
Taking it outside.
Hey, thank you. I'll be really quick, but just thanks to a lot of missionaries like me that have left. Just great mission, great movie that helps us reconcile that difference when we served 100% and now we're out and we're still 100%. So it's like we just are honest with ourselves, and so that's always tough. And my wife had to leave, but she grew up in Guatemala and was great friends with her mottos, and they're still one of our great friends, and just thank you for that movie. And the one question I guess I would have is, most of us left 30 years after our mission, so how are you so inspired to leave in the 80s, 5 years after your mission?
It's a really good question. Separate film, I think. I was just going to say, you're talking, I'm just thinking, yeah, I mean, you cared then and you care now, right? That's what matters. You cared. You still care. So...
Hi, Jeff. I was struck by your last journal entry. You were an assistant to President Amato, and your last journal entry said you felt hollowness and emptiness as you were leaving the country. That's not what one would expect from an assistant to the president as they're going home. Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, it surprised me that was there. It's not that I didn't remember it that way. I just didn't remember. And so when I looked at that, I remember thinking, I guess there was kind of a double consciousness that I had, where I had a relationship with him, and I was absolutely going through various ways of thinking about how can I stay worthy, how can I stay committed, how can I go home and still get up at 6 and pray every day, and And then there was that. There were really two different voices that I was writing out, and that was just a different one. And it surprised me when I saw it, but I didn't feel at all untrue to what was happening. I think what I said about being on the plane, that's about as close to a spiritual manifestation as I've ever had, was the one telling me that the church wasn't going to work for me. And it wasn't angry and cruel at all. It was kind of sad and peaceful. So,
congratulations on a tender and really graceful, right up here, tender and graceful film. It really, really was just exquisite and beautiful and kind and tender. There were many just powerful moments in this. But one that really just pulled on all the pathos of humanity was when you met with Miriam. I mean, there we, and I know I'm not messing around. I want to ask you what that was like, because, you know, here you have the passage of time, lifetimes have passed. You were there as a young hormonal man with some kind of, I'd say, messed up programming regarding sex, or at least very restricted, somewhat artificial, right? You know, and then you've progressed as a person. Can you add to that amazing scene?
I can actually. I mean, it's. I mean, I really was into Miriam on my mission, and I. She was into you. Yeah. Thank you, and. I mean, it's fascinating because, you know, the producer who's sitting next to me there, and the whole conversation was my girlfriend at the time. So, and Miriam had no problem when I said, you know, what would you have done if I'd kissed you? I would have kissed you back, you know. And so that was a great moment because I was pretty sure she was going to say that, and I really wanted to ask that question. But her husband, who was a really jealous guy, he came home and was unhappy, and so we kind of like had to exit pretty fast from there. I mean, yeah. So.
Okay, so let's put our hands up. Who's got the next mic?
I have the mic.
Great, there you go. Great.
First off, I just want to say thank you. I've been home from my mission for about 20 years this year, so you've told me that I have 5 more years to start thinking about this because it's been on my mind. And I think the most poignant thing for me was all of the journal passages. For me, that was my only outlet in just what was a very stressful and traumatic time in my life. And I've thought a lot about it, and I feel like it's this trauma that I need to resolve. And I kind of got this sense that, you know, over the years you were, you know, as you were mulling over it and preparing to do this film and to return and to do all of that there's all the turmoil. So I guess my question for you is, and especially with the way that you ended the film by saying, if I had ended it 5 years ago, it would have been different. If I had ended it 5 years from now, it would be different. I think I'm trapped in that, and I feel like I can't resolve my story. And I'm just wondering if going through this process and ending it where you did, if you feel any resolve, or if you think there will still be more that you'll need to do to kind of capture this and to continue to work through it, I guess.
That's such a good question, and it gets at the whole, you know, structure of story, which is all you obsess about when you're making a film like this. And I did hope I would find something, and whatever I hoped I would find, I definitely did not find. You know, I can talk about how it kind of underscored process rather than any kind of conclusion or result. But I will say this, and maybe this will sound like an odd thing, but it might help you. I made this film a couple of times, a couple of earlier versions. No journal entries, no audio tapes of me talking at my farewell, no tapes to my brother. Those are, just so you know, like if I'm going to leave this when I'm watching it, that's when I'm going to leave, because those are about as difficult for me to watch as anything, because there's something so vulnerable for me about listening to my 19-year-old self talk about this and write about Miriam, and you know, I put in stuff that was just really, I guess, you know, I'd say I'm not putting that in there. That's no way that's going in the film. And then I'd think about it, you know, and people would say you have to put it in. I'd say, oh, and eventually it would be in the film, and everyone responded to that. That made the film change entirely. And so I do think there was something happening about going back and looking at what you wrote and trying to, like, I mean, this sounds, I don't mean exactly this, but in some very positive, personal way, own it. Because I will never feel not vulnerable when this is happening on the screen, because I'm thinking, what an idiot I was, you know, but also just, I'm so exposed. But I think maybe if you're exposed in that way, some sense of exposure that you can kind of moderate yourself by writing or looking at your writing and thinking about it. That's kind of what happened with me, and I didn't set out to do that. I just stumbled into it.
So, first of all, it's been quite a long time since I left the church, and while my process included some years of maybe some anger and frustration. I really am not there personally anymore. So coming here, I don't think I really expected to just be ripped open in the first 5 minutes. Your first journal entry in the MTC, I just unexpectedly am like, well, I'm weeping right now. I did not, and I couldn't help but think of my brothers, particularly one who ended up having to leave the MTC because he lost over 20 pounds in 30 days. He was so depressed that he couldn't function. And time again, your journal entries did that to me. So just thank you for that. But I write in this particular comment, which is not a question, I don't want to speak so much to the LDS side of things, even though I know that most of us here probably share a commonality in some of the pain that we've experienced in leaving the church. But I really want to speak to just the human element in a world that's so masked and so disingenuous in so many ways, that this spoke to my human part in its raw honesty. And I just wish that we saw more things like this in general, not just about someone's experience leaving the church, but of people's life experience, because it was so, I would be surprised to find that there's a person in this room that didn't deeply want to give you a hug at some point during that. I really did, desperately. And not just you right now today, which thank you for doing this, but I really wanted to hug the 19-year-old version of you so bad. So just thank you, human to human, soul to soul, for this honest example of what we should really be creating as a family to help each other grow.
Thank you for saying that. And he did need a lot of hugs, I think.
Jeff will be available for hugging out in the lobby after.
So we're just about want to wrap this up. Does anybody want to do one last quick question? Or
Okay, I guess we do.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to thank you for that. So I do cry easily.
Put the microphone a little close.
I think I was on a mission about the same time you were in '82 in Costa Rica and Panama, and I loved every minute of it. And I had never felt so much love. I have maintained relationships with several people because, I felt like we were eternal friends, And then in the last several years, just the last few years, I've stepped away from the church. And, I'm really afraid to tell them for disappointing them. That's the hard thing I'm dealing with. I haven't reached a point where I feel like I can just be myself. But it was really special to see how you were able to just talk to them and be yourself. I don't know if I could do that. I'd like to. Do you have any suggestions?
It's one of the hardest things to do, and I don't think I do it very well at all. I think this film inflates how I do it, because when you've put in the money and the time and the planning, you've got a whole film crew standing there, you got to go forward. It was not. I just remember waking up every day in the hotel room and looking at what our shooting schedule was that day and just getting more and more depressed. I was like, oh, I'm going to disappoint these people today. I'm going to disappoint some more people. But I don't know. I think they know that I really respect them.
So, folks, thank you so much for coming out today. And did you enjoy this? Do you want us to do some more stuff like this?